Hello, everybody. I am Chet Ostrowski from the Teach Better team, and I have with me the amazing Jami Fowler-White. Jami, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great. That was the best chat. Oh, so much new information. Oh my God. It was
So
wonderful.
I'm so glad you're feeling that way. I thought it went amazing as well. I thought you did an amazing job. I love the topic as well, which was basically feedback and how do we ingrain feedback into our instruction. And one of the things I loved about this topic, and I'm going to ask you kind of why you thought about this in just a minute. One of the things I loved about it is we've had a lot of chats and we've been talking a lot about just like getting the doors open, getting the students in, and how does that look, right? And I really
Absolutely.
loved, and I felt like this chat for me grounded me back in instruction a little bit. It grounded me back into thinking about how am I interacting with my students? How am I giving them that consistent feedback and that positive feedback and that growth focused feedback? So I love the topic. So what was your reasoning or thought behind kind of this topic and why did you choose it for tonight?
The original topic that I really thought I was going to do was school reopening, but
Okay.
as it really was when I was asked a couple of months ago, I said, "Oh, I'm going to do school reopening."
Yeah.
But as my staff and I have been getting back into the school building, I thought it was just so much more important to be intentional about the topic that I chose, so that we can make sure that we're focusing on students, instruction, keeping the main thing the main thing. Like
I
we
love it.
will, I mean, we'll narrow down all that other stuff, but what's most important is the children. And so, especially this year, the type of feedback that we give to our students is going to be so critical because it'll help them to move forward in their learning. Because we're going to have to depend on them to do a whole lot of learning on their own, making sure that they take ownership for their learning, just all of those things. So I just really want to make sure that we are focusing on that because that's what's going to be most important this school year.
I absolutely love it. The comments and the people are coming in droves. We got a bunch of people watching. We got Maggie Gifford, Kate Clayton. Great to see everybody. Livia, Nikki, Candace Miller, all of these great people. So one of the Facebook users said that today was their first day of school with students, and talking about feedback has given them some amazing ideas to start planning their instruction. And that's one of the cool things I thought about this chat is it really did focus on thinking about instruction again, because I feel like so many teachers started school this week. They had their first day or their first staff development. And so many of them have been thinking, and you know, right? You're an administrator.
I'm there, yeah.
And we get to talk every week. So you work with your staff on a daily basis. But like, so many teachers are so worried about just getting in the door and getting the doors open that I love the fact that this chat really had teachers talking about what happens next. Like what happens when the students get there, right? And that's something I think we all need to be starting to think about, even though you might not have started yet, even though you will have students eventually. That's one thing that I've been telling a lot of educators. Listen, getting open is important. Getting students in the Zoom meeting is important. But what happens then, right?
Exactly. And so that's why it's so important. And not only that, but as I was building my questions, I wanted to make sure that we were focusing on what the students were doing. How do you know that your feedback is working? Like, have you talked to the students? Do you measure to see if they use your feedback? Just all of those different things are just so critical, so crucial, so important. And
Absolutely.
mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We got Jillian and Brad Hughes, the amazing Brad Hughes. We know him
Oh, hi,
from our
everybody.
administrative. We got Canada representing right now in the chat. We got Livia
Mm-hmm.
Chan, Brad Hughes, Jillian YCF
Hello.
coming here.
Hey. Oh, my goodness.
Everybody's hanging out. I
Hi,
love it.
everybody.
I love it. So, um, so I love the topic of feedback, and I think more teachers need to focus a lot more on feedback. And one of the things that showed tonight, and I think your questions did a great job bringing this out in the conversation was that feedback isn't just your test score or comments on a paper, right? It's so much more than that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I wondered how people were going to answer that particular question, because that's always, as a classroom teacher, I always went like, should I put a grade on this? Should I not put a grade on this? Like, will this actually diminish my
Right?
children's mindset? Is it gonna make them feel better? Because sometimes when they see that number in that letter, they don't think about anything else that you're giving them. And sometimes if they see the letter and say, "Oh, I was shooting for a 95 and I got a 98," I'm not gonna look to see what I did wrong for those 2 points. So I can make 100. Like
Yeah.
I met my goal. Like,
Yeah.
and so yeah. So it's just something to think about. And I don't know if teachers really ask the children how they feel about it, or but the research shows that when you put a number on something or a letter, children don't look at it.
Yeah. So I actually learned a new term. I think it's a made up term, but I really, really like it. So I'm going to start using it a lot more. And instead of calling it feedback, this new term that I learned was feed forward. So
Yeah, I saw that. Mm-hmm.
instead of
Mm-hmm.
focusing on what students can fix or what they can do better, like I think we really need to focus feedback on continuing the learning, right? So a lot of
Exactly.
times as teachers, we consider feedback a post-mortem. We consider it an autopsy of, well, this is how you did, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
And you hit the nail on the head when you talk about devaluing that feedback, because you
Mm-hmm.
put that stamp and you said it's final. So
Yep.
now, does it matter if you can make it better? Probably not. Does it
Mm-hmm.
matter if you can make those changes? Probably
Yep.
not, because nope, it's stamped, right? But if we
Mm-hmm.
feed forward, if we look at feedback holistically, and I love talking about this stuff with mastery
Oh
learning
yeah.
and retakes and all that stuff. If we
Mm-hmm.
focus on growth over I of just like stamping a grade on it, right? If we focus on that growth in the continuation of learning, right? I think we can change the way we look at feedback, and I think we can make it a
Mm-hmm.
positive experience, right? Because if feedback becomes a conversation with a student, if feedback becomes an opportunity for a student to do better, they can learn more, as opposed to just this final say that the teacher has in this one-sided conversation.
Agreed. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Feed forward. That should be our new thing. Feed
Yeah,
forward.
I'm stealing that. I don't even remember where I saw it, but I'm gonna write a blog and steal that for a couple things, I think.
Yeah, yes, I think you should. I should have put that in my book. Feed forward.
There you go. There you
I
go.
didn't put it in that terms, but I put it a little bit like a little bit like.
A lot of people
Yeah.
agree feedback has to be a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well done, Jamie. Great chat tonight. Candace Miller says she started standards-based grading last year and feels like that the term feed forward in that conversation piece absolutely um, fits kind of that model. So Caitlin Giordano, one of our amazing team members, actually does conferences with their students with grading, and it's one of the coolest things that I've ever heard. What she
Mm-hmm.
does is she actually has students follow the rubric or work on the assignment, and then they say what they think they should get, and they have to defend it against the rubric to her. So whether it's the final grade in the class or a grade on the assignment, the student approaches her and goes, I deserve this grade. Here's how I met what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I felt like through this chat, I was like, I bet you Jamie would love that, just because it's like it's so focused on that conversation. It's so focused on the fact that feedback is an organic process. So I absolutely love that. Absolutely.
Yeah, it also makes sure the children are thinking about their own thinking. And so that's what's most important.
Yes,
And that way they know
absolutely.
what they need to grow in, and they actually know the criteria that you're using to
Yeah.
measure whether or not they have mastered the standards or the skills. It's just, and it makes sure that as teachers, we think through the process that we're going to use to evaluate our students. So
I love
I love it.
I love all those things you're saying right now. I'm getting excited. You're getting me worked up, Jamie. When we talk about mastery, when we talk about feedback, when we talk about things like that, I think it becomes so important on what we focus our feedback in our grades on, right? One of the biggest mistakes I
Mm-hmm.
see teachers make is they provide very harsh feedback and or report grades on things they did not
Mm,
tell the students that they are going to measure. I think I see this most often if we want to use English as an example, okay? So if I'm having my students graded and I want to give them feedback on something like supporting an argument with evidence, right? That's the standard. That's the focus I want my student to be really good at. But then I tear their paper apart for grammar and fail them, even though their argument's really good with supported evidence. So I often have to have these conversations. Well, it doesn't mean you ignore the grammar issues. However, what are you measuring? Are you upfront about that? And are you supporting or tearing
mm-hmm.
down and diminishing the student's experience by kind of tearing this paper apart? Because I would also argue, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there are students that can make a great argument and support it with evidence, but their paper's grammar is probably not the best. So for me, they've mastered the evidence,
Yeah.
right? Does that make sense?
Mhm. It does. Not only that, but you really have to think about like when you're doing a skill, is it more important that you understand every single word or that the students actually mastered what you were teaching? And
Yep.
so and you can't grade everything. Like if I'm trying to give my students feedback and I'm grading every single thing, students can't do all of those things to grow. You just need to pick out the most important thing that will actually move that student. And that's what you should focus on. I mean, you could have a
Absolutely.
conversation with them and tell them, like, we're going to need to have to work on your grammar and your spelling. But I saw how you actually understood the skill and that type of thing, and let them know that that's an area we'll work on later, but you don't have to work on that right now. Uh,
So Lindsay Titus, who's an amazing educator, I love every time I get to talk with her. I actually have a scheduled call with her next week. I'm pretty excited about that. But she wonders, so if retakes are offered, and I just want to get your thoughts on this. I know I have my own, but
mhm.
if they are resubmitting to learn and grow, or are they just resubmitting to get a higher grade? And I think this comes back to the idea that once you step the number on it, you're
Mhm.
devaluing the feedback, right?
Yeah,
So I'd love to
yeah.
get your thoughts on, like, in that feedback cycle, is there a value to not putting that number on it, but just putting the feedback in the process, right? Especially if you're going to allow resubmissions and stuff. Does that make sense?
Well, I often wonder about how, like, when we have students write things, we tell them that it's a draft. And so we give them the opportunity to make it better.
Yep.
But in the other content areas, we don't often give students like those chances and tell them, oh, this is just a draft and you'll have the opportunity to practice and make it better. And I often wonder why our mindset
Yep.
is
Yeah.
different depending on the content area. And I just don't understand why. I don't know if it was the way we were taught, maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
I just think we should have the same mindset no matter
Agree.
what the content area is. Yeah.
And I
So how
think
do
you're
you
hitting
feel
it.
about that?
Well, I love talking about mastery, and I can talk about it till I'm blue in the
Mhm.
face. However, like, I really think this highlights the importance of having conversations around mastery or lack of mastery versus you got this grade. Now, when I talk to teachers, I usually tell them that a student should have around 80 to 85% mastery before you consider it good enough for them to move on to the next task, right? That's just based
Mhm.
on the literature and mastery. However, you don't have to put that number on a paper. That's just a mental reference point, right? So as long as you're having a conversation with a student, if Jamie in my classroom comes and says, I finished this assignment, right? And I'm looking at it and I go, this looks really good, this looks really great. I see on number 7, you kind of mix this up. Could you please look at number 7 and see if you can correct it? You don't have to say you got 7 out of 10. What you could say is, could you please take a look at number 7 and number 8? And then I'm going to show you this real quick mini lesson real quick. I'm going to double check it, redo your work, and I'll come back with you. Now, I haven't put a grade on that. I haven't put anything in the book. I've had the conversation. I've provided the feedback. But now the only purpose of the feedback was learning and growth. So to Lindsay's standpoint, I think we can remove that barrier by not focusing on the grade, but by focusing, is this good enough? Is it ready to demonstrate mastery, or is it not ready to demonstrate mastery? Because that's a real black and white like area, right? That's just, you either have it or you don't. So a student's going to go, oh, I have to do it, and I'll be able to show that I understand that. So go ahead.
I wonder if more teachers, in the earlier grades, teachers are taught to write notes, anecdotal notes about the feedback that they're giving to students, because a lot of times the younger babies can't actually write. And I just wonder if, as children move up in the grade levels, if teachers still continue to take those notes. Because you don't always have to put a grade on something to remember how students did. You can just write some notes about the feedback that you gave them, so that the next time you look at their work to see if they actually followed that particular feedback. I just wonder if that would maybe help some teachers to move away from always grading everything.
Sure.
I don't.
So I think you're also bringing up a second point, and this is like a huge. I just got to talk to Dave Schmidt recently, who's my assessment guru. Who's I go to when I really need to nerd out about assessment. He just wrote a brand new book on it. So I'm blessed to have him on our team. And when we talk about assessment, he talks about, is the assessment during learning or during instruction or post instruction? And instead of using, and so he actually doesn't believe, and I totally agree with him, that there should be anything called a summative assessment. Like, there should be no such thing as like this is the end of the process of learning. The way he views it is, assessment is literally, and I love this mindset, assessment is literally you holding up a measuring stick to see where a student is currently at. That's it. And if we need to stop looking at it as this big high stakes moment in the learning process, right? And I can tell you, running mastery in my classroom with the grid method, with hundreds of students, and working with teachers across the country on doing the same thing, one of the things I talk about is really building a positive feedback and a positive assessment culture, so that assessment is viewed as an opportunity for success, not a high stakes, high stress situation. For example, if I go to a student and go, it's time for your assessment, and if you fail it, you don't do well in this class, I've created a very negative assessment culture. But if I go to the same student and I go, are you ready to prove that you understand this? Are you ready to show me what you know? Are you ready to demonstrate your mastery? And if they say no in a mastery-based classroom, I go, that's okay. Take some more time and let me know when you're ready. If they say yes, now they're excited. Now they're like, yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this. And even if they end up not showing mastery, you're still having that positive conversation. And it's always around, well, that's okay. You haven't shown mastery yet, but if you do a couple things, let's take another opportunity and demonstrate mastery, right? So I think we have to stop looking at feedback and assessment as like one and done. We have to look at it as organic conversation in this ongoing process of learning, measuring, and then continuing the learning, not just learning and stamping it down.
That's what we're thinking, but a lot of teachers are evaluated based on that one and done test.
That's true.
And then states, when they write all of their legislation, they say that there has to be some type of data attached to how they measure administrators, teachers, so everyone. I wish we could figure out a way. Like when I was in elementary school, we used to take a test where we took a a pre-test at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year,
like
we
a
took that
mid-test
exact same test, you know what I'm saying? And so they were just checking to see if I learned something during that particular year. And I just think that, and that was like on my growth, and I think it would be better. It's hard for teachers not to focus on that because of the fact that they're always graded on that, and their jobs depend, and there's their livelihood, and so like, yeah.
So my rebuttal to that very common argument, right? I never think we should model bad practice just because it exists. Does that make sense? So like what you're saying is I would ask, if I asked 1,000 teachers right now whether they think it's good instructional practice to use a single data point to measure the success or failure of anything or anyone, okay? Everything okay?
Turn it down.
It's okay.
Hold on. Hold on 1 second.
Well, that's okay.
My
Everything
internet's
okay?
going in and out.
I can
Yeah,
still
I think
hear
my
you.
internet was going out. Yeah, I couldn't hardly hear you though. I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was like, what? No, wait. Sorry. This internet. Oh my goodness.
That's okay. Can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we would all agree, and I think you would agree as an administrator, and you ask any of your teachers, that's not a good idea to use a single data point to measure the success or failure of a student. However,
agreed.
State education departments do this to us all the time. But I would argue, my argument is always the same. Bad practice today or tomorrow doesn't make bad practice today okay. Right?
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
It's the same argument of, I need to lecture my students for 45 minutes because their college professors are going to lecture them for 45 minutes. That's a really broken argument because if you teach them better now, they will be more prepared if they get bad instruction later. So my argument, if you provide, just like you subscribe to and just like you supported in this chat tonight, if you provide holistic, positive feedback that helps the student learn as a matter of assessment, right? They learn during this feedback. They take this feedback. They use this feedback. I would argue that the students will do better on that one and done test because the feedback is better and the multiple chances were given. So once again, I'm going to just kind of reflect to kind of your initial concern. I agree with you. We shouldn't use one data point to say if a teacher is good or bad. That's stupid. No. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make it just none. Yes.
However, if we think that's a bad idea, we should not model it in our classrooms with our students. Right?
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I have no argument for that. You're right. Yeah.
That's okay. You're allowed to agree with me, Jami. I won't tell anyone.
Do not tell anybody.
We won't tell the rest of the mastermind that you agreed with me that one time.
No, just that one time. Just this one time. We're gonna agree this one time.
All right, Jami. I do not want to keep you here all night, so I want to kind of start wrapping things up just a little bit here. And I absolutely loved this chat. I want to tell you, you did an amazing job. And I'd like to leave our audience and everyone watching. By the way, if you're watching right now, put #live. If you're watching this on the replay, put #replay. Then we know where everyone's coming from. No matter when you're watching this, okay? If you're sitting here thinking, I just went through this amazing chat, I'm about to start my school year, what are some questions that a teacher should be asking themselves and reflecting on as they get into their classrooms and they introduce themselves to their students? What are some questions that they can ask themselves about their assessment and their feedback to make sure it's up to par, to make sure it's Jami Fowler-White standards, okay?
Well, the first question is, what is your purpose? What is your intention for the actual assessment that you're giving? And then you need to make sure that when you are teaching, if there is a topic that you don't get to, I know that teachers don't like to remake assessments, adjust assessments, but it's so important that you're only assessing students over the
Yes.
instructional material that you taught. Oftentimes we don't get as far as we think that we were going to at that particular time, and it often frustrates a student when they have studied and practiced and then you throw something at them that they have never had. Even if you tell them, oh, this is just a little pre-question, I just want to see how you do on that, that really breaks the focus because you're trying
Yeah,
to assess them over what they learn, not trying to figure out what they know.
absolutely.
And so it's a little bit confusing. So just be careful of your purpose and your intention. Do make sure that you work through the problems and the tasks, because sometimes what looks good as you are planning and when you actually work through the actual
Yeah,
task is not, it does not do what you want. And so you want to make sure that it is you're intentional and focused in all of your work and your planning, and what you give to students actually aligns with your purpose.
yeah,
Okay, and so and then you need to make sure that you have thought about a feedback process, so
yeah,
or a feedback loop. Are you going to give feedback during real time with the students? You're going to plan a one-on-one with the students? Are you going to teach students how to give feedback to each other? No matter the environment, there are breakout rooms, there are all kinds of electronic things. There's like
yeah,
now discussion, there's just Seesaw, OneNote, there's just so many different things. Just even a simple Google Doc where students can give you some feedback and tell you how they're feeling about the lesson. Because you got to loop them in on what's going on and build their relationship with them so that they will actually be honest and give you honest feedback about what they need, because students know when they didn't get what you were teaching. And it's so
yeah.
important to teach that. And then the last thing I would say is what kind of metacognitive strategies or growth mindset, culture, what kind of things are you actually putting in place to make sure that students are able to check in on their own thinking, because they'll be
Love it.
more receptive to any feedback
Yeah,
that you give them if they've been thinking about what they were thinking and what they were
I
doing.
love it. I love it. Awesome. I don't even have anything to add to that, Jamie. That was good.
Mhm.
You've done something that many people have never been able to do,
Yes,
which is
I've never known you not to have anything to say.
shut
Oh
me
my
up. I'm like, like seriously, that just happened. So that was absolutely awesome. So much awesome, great tips in there, and I love the fact that your kind of getting started tips started from like some of the basics. Like, make sure your assessments align to what you're teaching. Like, that's like 101, right? Like, that needs to happen. But
goodness.
oftentimes we're in such a rush to do things, like we can make mistakes and things like that. And then really putting those feedback loops, having a plan for feedback. One thing I will add, you didn't totally shut me up, is figure out what you're going to do when you do give the feedback. What happens after, right? And I'm actually going to give you credit for covering that anyway, because
Tracking
it's
earlier.
part,
Yeah, I did. I covered that
it's
earlier.
part of the loop. That's part. So you got me either way. You got me either way. So Jamie, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody. Livia, Candace, Brad, Lindsay Titus, Van Scott, Candace Miller. I can't name all you. I'm so sorry. There's too many to name. But thank you so much for participating tonight. Jamie, thank you for moderating tonight. You ran an amazing chat. I absolutely love that we got to share how awesome you are. I get to experience how great you are almost every single week, but the rest of the world might not be so lucky. But tonight they were. They got to experience how great you are. So thank you so much. Everyone, have a fantastic night and stay awesome. Thanks, Jamie.